What's happening, everybody? Welcome into a brand new episode of Fighting Words. Anthony Sanfilippo's here. I'm Bob Wankel. And Anthony and I were not on the same page this morning. Couldn't get the show off in the morning hours. And I know there were some people that were ready to hear me rock and roll here, take apart this team after getting swept by the Brewers this weekend. And we were going to punt it to tomorrow, but we're here for the people. We found a way, and we're going to put together 45 minutes to dissect and go through what happened this weekend at Citizens Bank Park. And man, Anthony, it was ugly.
Yeah. First of all, Bob, this is worth pointing out because it was the first thing I said to you before we went live, and Hexram noticed it right away. Wankel looking fresh.
Yeah, we were actually going to start right at 2 o'clock, but I was getting my hair cut. I'm straight out of the chair into this one. So, wanted to clean it up a little bit. It's getting a little bit warmer outside now. I want to, get them for my summer look.
That's right. It's good. It's a good summer look. This weekend was nuts. I was not down there for yesterday's game. So I missed the defensive meltdown yesterday. I got to watch it. I mean, I saw it, but I wasn't there in person. But boy, did I have to sit through the disaster of the 17-7 game on Saturday. We obviously already talked about the loss on Friday night because we did the show a day late over the weekend. So it's really just the last two games that we haven't reacted to, and boy, were they bad.
Calling that game on Saturday 17-7 is like, it's like the Eagles-Chiefs Super Bowl being 40-22. I mean, it wasn't that close. It was not that close. It was all garbage time. They should not get the benefit of the doubt on 17-7. You know what's funny? Friday night didn't bother me at all. Taijuan Walker, not a great start. Bullpen comes in big spot, can't get it done. They're lifeless. But for whatever reason, that game didn't agitate me that much. Saturday, there's a lot to talk about in terms of how Saturday went down. None of it good. But again, like that game didn't really bother me that much. It's like your starter went out and he gave you nothing. He buried you early. You had a couple opportunities early on to maybe punch yourself back into the game. You didn't do it. Again, though, you're going to go through stretches in a season where you don't play good baseball. It's going to happen. The one yesterday, though, I'm thinking about it. It's 2-0, I think, in the sixth, going into the sixth. And I'm like, if they can just win this game and they go 3-3 on this homestand, it's basically what I thought they were going to do before it began. And I would take that considering how well they played during the month of May. You're just going to get these stretches where things aren't clicking for you. And I take 3-3 and I say, no big deal. Yesterday, and when you look at the totality of the weekend, though, it's not just that they got swept. It really is, for me, how they got swept, specifically yesterday. You waste a good start. Like, this is what the Phillies are built for, a good start. You have a chance to score a couple of extra runs and tack on. They can't do it. The bullpen can't hold. Defensively, we know they're not that strong. It crushed them yesterday. And again, zoom out, 13 games over 500. It was still a very strong month overall. They're still going to be in position here to have a nice summer. But the questions that everybody has about this team, they're only intensifying, and rightfully so. We all know what the deficiencies, or we all suspect we know what the deficiencies of this team are. And yesterday, man, they were magnified and amplified 10 times over. And it gives you a lot to digest about the viability of this team. Again, it's about winning the World Series. And it's impossible not to watch this weekend and say, well, I have some questions.
Well, no, you absolutely have questions. And I know what it's about. But at the same time, you got to be careful. You can't let just like we said back in April when they lost 5 in a row, they got swept by the Mets, and they looked terrible at 13-13. And we said, well, you can't let a bad week in April determine what's going to happen in October. You can't let this bad weekend in May determine what's going to happen in October as well. That said, it's fair to criticize exactly everything that you mentioned because these are problems that seem to persist with the Phillies. And you worry, of course, that those problems, if not rectified, and when it comes to defense, you're not going to be able to rectify that. That is what it is. It involves the players that you have on this team who are playing with regularity. That is something that's certainly a red flag for October. The other things, the other problems, I think can be rectified still. But in the moment, it's a major, major problem for this team.
We're not going to break any news here talking about the inconsistencies of the offense or some of the weaknesses of the offense. They exist. We actually spoke at length about Alec Boehm and Nick Castellanos on Saturday morning show. If you missed that, we did record over the weekend, and I invite you to go back and listen specifically to the Boehm and Castellanos part. I thought that was pretty much the highlight. And one of the takeaways and the thing that I sort of proposed is that, yes, like Alec Boehm has saved his season statistically, and he had a really nice month of May, and he finished it on a strong note, and the numbers look good. But this idea that you move him back into the middle of the order, or when there's an at-bat of consequence, when you really need to bear down and get it done in a big spot, it seems like that guy struggles to do it. And it played out numerous times this weekend. And the offense is going to be inconsistent. We can talk about the lineup. They're going to flash. They're going to surge at times. They're going to struggle at times. That is what this team is from an offensive standpoint. But what really concerns me, and one of the things that I think that you could lean into a little bit during this recent hot stretch was that, yes, you lose Jose Alvarado, but you felt like maybe Ryan Kerkering was rounding into form. There was a 10 appearance stretch there in May where he'd only allow one earned run. He didn't allow an earned run yesterday, but we'll get to that in a second. Say, all right, maybe he's finally taking a step forward. Strom still trying to feel it a little bit, but overall, okay, you feel all right about him. And then Jordan Romano, wow, he's really put that bad, shaky start in the rearview mirror, and now he's a guy that you feel like you can count on. Now, suddenly, he looks like he's a little bit leaky again. And so in this moment, as we're talking right now, we know that they don't have a lot of bullpen depth. And yes, they have made some moves here, and we'll see how that impacts the bullpen moving forward. But not only do they not have a lot of depth, there's not one guy in this moment entering the game that I say, I feel good about this, the way that I would have with a Kerkering at his peak a year ago, with Strom at his best a year ago, and certainly with Jeff Hoffman at his best a year ago. It used to be a strength getting into that bullpen, and now there's not one single guy coming out that door that I go, this is going to be a good spot for them. And that's tough. It's tough to win like that.
Yeah, it really is. And you know, obviously the bullpen is a major issue. You know, and I don't know if these changes, Bob, are going to be anything other than we need to tread water. Well, yeah. we need to tread water until the trade deadline. And, you know, and that's when, you know, at that point we'll have a better idea of what we're putting together for the second half of the season and ultimately for what we hope is our playoff run. I think what you're seeing now is, look, they had a DFA Ruiz. He was never good. He was mediocre at best last year. He was terrible after the injury this year when he came back from that neck injury, just really, really bad. He gave up 5 more runs on Saturday. Like, he had to go. That's being said, if the solution to that is, well, we think Taijuan Walker can be a high leverage 1-inning reliever, and then we're going to bring in Seth Johnson, who couldn't throw strikes in AAA, to be part of that bullpen. That's not going to be an answer either, right? So, like, you know, I think this is the rearranged deck chairs on the Titanic kind of maneuver, right, for now. And they're really hoping against hope that this will get them to late July, and then they can really rectify it. Because if you look at it, you know, holistically here, like, everything you said about the 3 guys at the back of the bullpen is right. And the rest of the bullpen doesn't really instill a lot of confidence. So at this point, this is a bottom tier bullpen in Major League Baseball. And I don't know how, even over the course of the next 7 weeks, it gets much better than what it's been.
You mean pre-deadline?
Yeah, pre-deadline.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think that you can get creative and you could talk about Abel. We've done this, and I don't want to spend too much time doing it, but, like, yeah, sure, Abel might be a factor. You go out and you make one acquisition, and if those 2 guys right there click, you feel a little bit better about this bullpen. It's a little bit more deep. You think that some of these guys that we're mentioning that have struggled and that have been up and down, that there's more in the tank. Like, can you make this a passable bullpen? You can, and they do have some options. But it does kind of kill me that we're sitting here on June 2nd, basically 37% of the way into the season. And you said it, this is a bottom tier bullpen, whether it's the worst bullpen or the 6th worst bullpen or however you want to quantify it. It's just amazing to me that you have the salary that you have invested into this team. You have some degree of significant or great expectation. And this is the bullpen that you came into the season with. And you go back and listen to our shows, and it's not like unique to us. We didn't crack the code before the start of the regular season. I think a lot of evaluators looked at this and said, man, this bullpen looks a little bit light to me. It's been worse than I would have imagined it to be, but at no point was this a strength. Like, how could you build this team with such a thin bullpen? And I'm having a hard time answering that question right now.
I am too. I felt, and we've said it on this show, it's not like this is, revisionist history, but, I felt all along that they were one piece short coming into the season in the bullpen. I just looked at it and said, yeah, there's another arm missing out there somewhere. And then, of course, you lose Alvarado, and now you're 2 pieces short in that bullpen, probably 3 pieces short in that bullpen, ultimately. Maybe you can find that from within, at least part of it. Maybe one of those guys comes from within, whether it's Mick Abel or
you talk about Abel, right? Like, and I think that you and I are kind of bullish on that concept. Like, we see what the Phillies see, and I think that he's emerged as a legitimate prospect at this point, and maybe he gets involved in trade conversations. Maybe he is a short-term solution, but there's a lot of projection in this. Like, we can talk about the live arm and how the fastball plays with the curveball, and it looks like it could work. It has the potential to work, but it is quite a jump to ask a guy who is not a reliever, who has not been brought up as a reliever, to make that switch. Like, it could work. It might work. The stuff says that it should work, but that does not mean it's going to work. And if your best solution in this moment is hoping and wishing that a guy who had underperformed significantly so up until 6 weeks ago in his journey to the major leagues is the primary bullpen solution post July 31, like, that's a hell of a jump to make, and a lot of stock to put in a guy who I like. I'm excited to see him throw again on Thursday, but I don't know what that would look like if they were to move him to that role later this season, and nor do they. So there are a lot of things that they're going to need to materialize, both in-house, both in terms of the market, but they're going to have to make it work. They cannot go into October with a tweak or a Tanner Banks equivalent acquisition at the deadline and say, well, we have a surplus of starting pitching. We're going to throw some darts and hope they land where they're supposed to. It's not going to work. And we'll have wasted an entire season here.
Yeah, absolutely. And, the invisible man chimes in and says they shouldn't have been cheap and re-signed Hoffman. The one thing I'll say to that is look at what Jeff Hoffman's done so far this year with Toronto. And it's
I agree. And knowing what you know now, and you see the numbers and you go, okay, but do you give the Phillies credit for not re-signing Hoffman in that he has not been great, or are they just lucky that he hasn't been great? Like, I'm going to guess that they didn't see or foresee a significant decline this season. My guess is it was about the years. It was about the money, not about the pitcher. Now, they look smart because he's not pitching well.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. So let me split the baby for you a little bit. I think that they can deserve credit for not wanting to commit what it took to sign Jeff Hoffman because they had some concerns about it. And obviously the guy failed 2 physicals with 2 other teams before signing with Toronto. So maybe the Phillies had some knowledge that these other teams, didn't in advance. And so that could have been, you could say, hey, that's smart by the Phillies. Where I won't give the Phillies credit is that they needed to replace that. And knowing that you were going to also lose Carlos Estevez, you needed to replace that as well. And they replaced both with one guy in Jordan Romano. That's where, to me, not enough was done in the bullpen. That's why I look at it and say they don't get credit for not signing Hoffman. If you want to look at it in a vacuum, I'm cool with it, saying, yeah, maybe we were concerned about, how much it would have cost to sign this guy. And you see what his production's been so far, and you say, well, they probably made the right call, but the wrong call was not finding another arm as well. I think that's where the mistake was that the Phillies made, and that's why they're in the situation that they're in right now. Yeah,
and if you're into numbers and you kind of want to know where they stand right now, Phillies relievers this season have a 4.65 ERA. It is the 6th worst ERA, bullpen ERA, in baseball to this point. And just in terms of if you're not a believer in ERA or that's not how you want to, quantify the performance of a bullpen, they also have the 8th highest whip. So a lot of base runners, a lot of earned run scoring. And yesterday we saw a situation where, Kerkering doesn't even allow an earned run and he still sunk them. I mean, it was an absolute killer. And this is what you have when teams start to string together losses and they're not playing good baseball. Yesterday, you see a situation where the defense does not pick up the pitcher, and then the pitcher does not pick up the defense. Things just totally spiral after the Turner error, and that is the mark of a team that is not playing good baseball. I won't say it's the mark of a bad baseball team because I don't think the Phillies are a bad baseball team, but that is what you're going to get when you lose 3 in a row, 4 in a row, 6 out of 7. Like, these are the games you're going to get. And boy, did you get one of those games yesterday. And I know that people want to talk about Trey Turner. I see it online. I've heard it on the airwaves today, and we could talk about Trey Turner a little bit specifically. But I do want to go back first to Saturday. And I have 2 separate rants on Saturday.
Go ahead.
Number one, I have never in my life, and you wrote about it, and you gave the Phillies viewpoint as to why this happened, but I have never seen a team let a pitcher sabotage his entire season to the degree that the Phillies allowed Jesus Luzardo to do that on Saturday. And I've heard it said a lot of different ways. Let me say it one different way, and I had not heard this yet. In his first 11 starts this season, Jesus Luzardo allowed 14 earned runs. In 3 1/3 innings pitched on Saturday, he allowed 12 earned runs. This is a guy that we were talking about 3 days ago as a likely all-star out of the National League. This is a guy that when you looked at the Cy Young odds was a top 5, top 6 guy. And quite honestly, I think if you looked at the numbers deep enough, you'd say he's probably like number 3, number 4. And this morning, I don't think he's an NL all-star. I think that he's totally dropped in terms of that conversation. I think you can actually kiss Cy Young goodbye, which might sound crazy based off of one bad start, but the numbers are such, and there are so many guys that have good numbers in the National League that you can't, in good faith, make the argument. You can't make the case at this point. I mean, they crushed this guy's season. Now, he crushed his season too. The player has to take some accountability in this. He was absolutely dreadful, and he didn't help himself with defensively. He didn't get help defensively in that 4th inning. Like, I get the whole deal. He shares in the blame. But to allow that to continue to go from 8 to 9 to 10 to 11, and then he comes out and the 12th run scores inherited, I just cannot believe, short bullpen or not, that it got to that point with him on Saturday.
Well, I can a little bit. This is where I will kind of disagree with you on a couple things. First thing is I don't think this knocks him out of being an all-star. I think
I absolutely do.
No, because you got to remember, fans don't vote for pitchers, right? So the industry votes for pitchers, and I think that they have within the industry the ability to look at one game like that and say, we're not going to let that one game, especially if he comes out. Let's say his next, because you got he's going to have 4 more starts before they pick the all-star team. Let's say the next 4 starts he's like he was in the first 11. Like, is the league going to hold that one start against him to not be an all-star? I don't think so. If he goes out and struggles in the next 4, then yeah, okay, I'm on board with that. That maybe it ultimately sank his all-star chances.
Do you know where he was among starting pitchers in the National League going into Saturday's start? You know where he was in ERA overall?
Yeah, he was like 3rd, right?
3rd. You know where he is this morning? He's 22nd. 22nd. There's 21 starters, qualified starters in the National League that have a better ERA than this guy right now.
Yeah, but ERA is not as we know, is not the be-all, end-all, right?
Yeah. I hope that the industry then looks at it and says, well, he's 3rd in F-WAR. You know, I mean, come on.
Yeah. I know, but I'm serious. I'm serious about that. But that's, to me, that's a secondary argument, right? The real question, and the one that everybody's been discussing, is why the hell did they leave him out there for that to happen? I mean, as I pointed out, and it was only the 5th time in the history of baseball that a starting pitcher pitched 3 1/3 or less innings and gave up 12 or more runs. 3 of them have happened in this century, and 2 happened way back when. The other 2 were Masahiro Tanaka in 2019 with the Yankees, and former Philly A.J. Burnett when he was with the Pirates in 2012. So here's how I look at it, Bob. He's down 4-0 after 4 batters, right? But really, when you look at that, all right, that's a cheap single, a walk, and a home run. All right. I'm okay with it's not a great start, but it's okay, whatever. 2nd inning, 3rd inning, gets through with no problem. So you're not obviously going to have someone up to start the 4th inning, right? So
yeah.
You're not going to have anybody up at the beginning of the inning. things then start to unravel after what ended up being, you had the error. It was a broken bat single to lead off the inning. Then he makes a throwing error on a bunt. Okay, so that's not a pitching problem. Then there's the balk, right? And the balk, he kind of loses control. And he admitted after the game, he's like, I'm stunned that they didn't throw me out because I got a little hot-headed out there. So now here's a pitcher who's already had a bad inning, is trying to keep the team in the game, and then he gives up a broken bat single. He's responsible for the throwing error, and then he gets called for a balk that probably wasn't a balk. And so now he's a little emotionally not there. So if you want to argue that you could start getting somebody up at that point because of the emotion of the game, I could kind of see it a little bit. But his pitch count was low. The bullpen was short. And you're paying this guy, and he said afterwards, this is what they pay us for, to flush these things. You're paying him to be able to get through that emotional moment and be able to come out and get a job done. In a matter of 3 batters, it's 8-0, right? So even if you got somebody warm at that point, okay, which was still 4-0 at that point, even if you got someone warm, that person's not coming into the game before it's 8-0. So now it's 8-0, right? You still need to get 2 outs in this inning. The bases are empty. Cotham goes out to talk to him. And he basically says, all right, look, this is a terrible outing. We just need you to get 2 outs because our bullpen is short. Can you give us 2 outs? He tells Cotham, yeah, I got it. I got these 2 outs. And in a matter of 6 pitches, it's 11-0. They started to get the pitcher up at that point, but before Hoskins hits the second home run. But as soon as he hits that second home run, you can't just bring that guy into the game because he's still not warm at that point. So I think if you break it down into context, you can kind of understand why it happened the way it happened. It's very, very rare, I admit, and I get it, right? But in the grand scheme of things, he didn't want to bring the 3 guys in that ended up pitching yesterday. He couldn't throw the 2 guys that had pitched multiple innings the day before because they went multiple innings the day before, so they're not going to go on a second day in a row. So your bullpen was basically down to Joe Ross and Jose Ruiz. And then depending on what the score is, a position player. They ended up using Tanner Banks because Jose Ruiz got torched, and they had to bring another guy in. They didn't want to bring Banks in, but they had no choice. But they really had 2 relief pitchers, and they wanted to get 2 innings out of each of them. And that's all that they were trying to get. And so that's why they left him in. Some of it has to go on Luzardo's shoulders for not.
Absolutely. Look, I mean, he's a big boy. We're not, This isn't Little League. I'm not trying to coddle the guy, but I mean, I just can't think about how many times I've ever seen that type of line before where the guy just gets absolutely smoked. And, look, again, I'm going to reiterate my stance. I don't think he's going to be an all-star. And I'm just going to give you this real quick. There are 38 qualified starting pitchers out of the National League right now. He's 33rd out of those 38 in WHIP, 1.34, and opponents are hitting 264 against him, which is 36th out of the 38 qualified starters. His numbers were so bad on Saturday that it has completely torpedoed the overall view of his season. Now, again, I get it. You and I were smart people. We can look at it with some context and say, has Jesus Luzardo been a godsend for the Phillies so far this season? Of course. He's been arguably their best pitcher. But when you start to look at the statistics relative to the rest of the league, it's not special. And not only is it not special, in some of these areas now, it's really not good. And
let me ask you, Bob. All right, so he's 5-1, 3.58 ERA. If after the next 4 starts, this guy is 7-1 with a 3 ERA, is he an all-star?
He might be. I mean, it's pretty competitive. You start to look at the names, you go, okay, is he having a good season? Yes. Is he an all-star relative to the rest of the National League? I don't know. I guess let's play the game for a second, right? How many starters are they going to carry? 7?
Probably. That's about right.
All right. Is Senga ahead of him right now?
Yeah.
Is Wheeler ahead of him right now?
Yeah.
Is Skeens ahead of him right now?
Yeah.
Is Yamamoto ahead of him right now?
Yeah.
Robbie Ray with his 2.43 ERA?
Maybe.
All right. How about the guy? I mean, and then this is where it gets interesting, but like Pavetta's had an excellent year. Chad Patrick, who we saw this weekend from Milwaukee, has had a really good year. He's ahead of him. David Peterson's numbers are outstanding. Corbin Burns, his elbow might have exploded yesterday. It looks like he might have dodged serious injury, but he was 5th in the NL. And then you have guys like Logan Webb and Sale, who I actually now think is ahead of Luzardo based on his numbers. I mean, it gets interesting. I mean,
and the other thing you have to take into consideration is who's going from what teams, right? And how many
right
guys
now, you just put, if I give you pitcher A versus pitcher B and I put Chris Sanchez and Jesus Luzardo's numbers up next to one another blindly, you would take Sanchez.
Yeah.
Based on these numbers. So again, like that's part of it. Like, what if Chris Sanchez goes out and deals for the rest of June? Well, they're not taking 3 Philly starters. And again, like whether or not Jesus Luzardo makes the All-Star team, I understand is not like the most pressing topic here, but it's just, regardless of whether or not he does, and regardless of whether or not the Phillies let him roll 3 or 4 batters too long, whatever. But I mean, it was a catastrophic start. Now, the other thing that
that's the other last thing I want to say about
okay,
this.
go ahead.
Let's say they pull him after it's 8-0 instead of 12-0. Would it have mattered? Would it have changed the game?
Changed the game on Saturday in terms of win-loss? No, absolutely not.
So that's why are we?
This argument solely about the perception of Luzardo's season and Luzardo's numbers and what it means for him, big picture. It's not about games.
Right. It's all about the statistics. It's all. Yeah. That's all the argument's about. Right.
Yeah. No question. The other thing is, it's funny. Like I made this point on Twitter. I said, I don't know that I've ever seen a guy, this far into the season. And by the way, everyone, like I said at the top, I think we're about 38% of the way through the season. We're not 10 games in anymore. I made the point, like I've never seen a guy who had been sitting this well positionally in terms of an all-star team or in terms of the Cy Young conversation really just fall off a cliff like that in one start. I'm sure it happens. I'm sure that it's not totally unprecedented, but I cannot recall this. And then you get the assholes on Twitter who are like, well, I didn't know we even talked about Cy Young on May 31st. I'm like, I'm not awarding him the trophy tonight. I'm just saying like, yeah, we're 40% of the way through the season. Like you can talk about these things just like you would talk about NFL MVP on Halloween. Like it's just a conversation piece. I'm not saying Jesus Luzardo was going to start the All-Star game. I'm not saying Jesus Luzardo was going to win NL MVP. We're just talking here. We're just talking about sports. So like, I get it. I get that we don't award anybody anything on May 31st. Like everybody on you people say that I'm miserable on Twitter. These people, man, like who are these people? Like what are we talking about? Get some friends. Go have a beer and go talk to somebody. Well, I didn't know we even did Cy Young on May 31st. What are you talking about? Like, what are you talking about? Shut up. You're in my mentions. Get the fuck out of my face.
Oh, I love this. This is the best. This is the best you've been yet.
What are we doing? Oh, we can't talk about Cy Young. We can't talk about the All-Star team on May 31st. Like, losers.
Oh,
give me a break, dude.
Can we get to Sunday?
God. Yeah, that was Saturday. And that was Saturday. Let's get to Sunday now.
I got to tell you, can I tell you, I have a bigger concern than I think of what we're going to talk about. By the way, Ryan Barnhart just said this. This is why.
Thank you, Ryan.
Yes. Yeah.
You are allowed to be in my Twitter mentions, please. Yeah. You're always invited.
And then, of course, we have this joker. Is that Russ Joy on the right?
Yeah. I don't know how Russ does it. Like my conversations on online about baseball generally fine, but these people, like, I don't care if you don't agree with my opinion. Like, I do not care. That's fine. Yeah. Like, let's debate it. But like
it's crazy.
It's crazy. Well, that's your fault for even thinking about Cy Young on May 30th. Okay, all right. You're right. You're so much smarter. Silly man.
Can I tell you, the thing about yesterday is, and everybody's talking about the errors, and we got to talk about the errors, and we will talk about the errors. But I want to put something else in before it first. Actually, there's 2 things that really have to be discussed. Not just the errors. We got to talk about Rob Thomson kind of giving a mea culpa after the game, like saying that, he would, second guess himself a little bit, which we've never heard him say.
Don't hear that very often.
Very often, right? So that we got to talk about that too. But the thing that bothered me the most, and it's not just about Sunday, but I think it manifested itself a little bit on Sunday. But the thing that bothers me the most is the Phillies against left-handed pitching are not good because of their lineup. And not because their lefties aren't hitting. I mean, you could talk all you want about the fact that the righties don't hit the lefties. And so this year against left-handed starters, their batting average is 5 points lower. Their on-base percentage is 13 points lower. They're slugging .396 against left-handed starters. And a .720 OPS, not good enough. Just not good enough. And, that's a problem that really is reflected in the right-handed hitters in this lineup. And so it makes you wonder, is that where the changes really need to happen? So I remember bitching that they brought Max Kepler in because I didn't think it was a great fit. But the reason is because you didn't have right-handers that could get the job done. They thought they could. They thought guys like Alec Boehm and Nick Castellanos and JT Realmuto and Weston Wilson and Edmundo Sosa would all hit lefties. And while Sosa did for a little while,
he's been terrible.
He's been terrible lately. Yeah, and this is why he's not an everyday player. And Castellanos has been okay, but just okay.
No power. I mean, this was a big part, and this was a big part of Saturday's show.
But now you're trotting out a lineup where Weston Wilson can't. He's supposed to hit lefties, can't hit lefties, and then he makes the boneheaded play in left field on top of that, right? Which makes you wonder: is this the guy you want on your team? Is this the guy you want to be in your lineup whenever a left-handed pitcher is being thrown at the Phillies? And guess what? Left-handed pitchers are going to be thrown at the Phillies. It's a thing, right? The starters, at least, they might change their mind a little bit in bullpen matchups because of the way Schwarber and Harper hit lefties. But as far as starters, the left-handed starters are going to be thrown at the Phillies because they struggle against them. To me, that is the thing that nobody's talking about today, but is more of a concern as you go forward than the fact that Trey Turner booted a ground ball hit right at him or Weston Wilson misplayed a fly ball.
Well, at what point with Weston Wilson, let's just talk about that because he's the guy that everybody's sort of zeroed in on. And even before yesterday, the question starting to be asked here, what does this guy give you? And I know what he's supposed to give you, some defensive flexibility, and he's supposed to be able to take on left-handed pitching. He's hitting 179 this year, and that's obviously horrible. The issue, though, is he's hitting 182 against lefties. He's 4 for 22 with 8 strikeouts, and he doesn't have an extra base hit against left-handed pitching. So if that is what he's going to give you against left-handed pitching, why is he here? And how much longer do you have to wait? Are you 22 at bats isn't a lot, so we want to give him some run time here. Let's give him till July? Or do you kind of say, this guy's a dime a dozen, we can make a move now and just try something different?
I mean, I would make the change. And I know that they've been playing Otto Kemp in left field just once a week in AAA. I don't care. I'd rather give him a shot. He's younger. Bring him up. You're not losing.
What are you worried about? Bad defense?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. You already have bad defense. What the hell's the difference?
Let's bring up Otto Kemp. Let's trade for Rhys Hoskins and just try to first to 10 wins.
Well, no. So my point is that at least give it a shot. If you're gonna give it a run till the deadline and figure out what the teams where you need to fix the team at that point, why not see what Otto Kemp gives you? Because maybe you can get by with Otto Kemp in left field. Maybe he's okay enough in left field if he's hitting 300 against lefties or slugging 840 against lefties, right? Maybe. If not, if he comes up and does the same thing as Weston
Wilson, why not? Yeah, why not?
Guess what?
What do you have to lose?
Then you got to go get somebody else, right? I mean, but this isn't working. And it's not where I know he didn't start the season with them because he was on the shelf, and so he only's been playing for a little over a month. I get it. But it's to me, it's not, you've not seen the same guy that you saw last year in this role. And so why let that continue to go on, especially when the whole team is not hitting lefties? Bring somebody up who has been hitting them. That's what I'm saying. Give them a shot. It cannot be worse than what you've had so far.
Yeah. I mean, I'm looking at it, and, he's obviously been an issue. Boehm has not been an impact bat against left-handed pitching. Castellanos, credit to him, just to kind of, summarize what we talked about over the weekend, but he's hitting 307 against left-handed pitching, and that's fine enough, but he has 1 home run against lefties this season. They don't slug. They don't true slug against left-handed pitching. They just don't.
No, it's on the right side. They're below 400 as a team against left-handed pitching, against slugging. It's terrible. I'll throw one more option at you. Because if you're so worried about Otto Kemp not playing well in left field, they've already trotted Schwarber out to left field a handful of times this season. So would it be the worst thing in the world to play Schwarber in left field against left-handed pitching to start a game and then have a guy like Kemp as your DH? Like, would that kill you?
Well, I'm going to take the low-hanging fruit here, and I'm just going to make the comment that if the team is so unconcerned or unbothered by the defensive shortcomings at shortstop that they continue to play that guy at shortstop, would they really park a guy that is at least interesting with at least some projection of upside? Would they park him down in AAA and be scared to death of what he's going to give you in left field in spots? Like, it just doesn't make sense to me.
And that's the thing too. Like you don't have to play him an entire game out there.
By the way, Otto Kemp's not 19. Like, this isn't like a young man. Like, it's time. Yeah. It's time to see if he can do it. And if you don't think he can do it, then okay. Like, and if internally right now you're like, he's not going to hit major league pitching. We know that. So like, let's just see if we can bury him for another 6 weeks and let some team that thinks maybe he can hit. Like, we don't want to expose him to the major league. Maybe that would be the best. That would be the best rationale for keeping him in the minor leagues right now.
Yeah. You're right. You're right about that. To me, that's the only rationale for keeping him in the minor leagues right now. As for Turner and his defense,
he's only made 5 errors. His outs above average are actually 2, which is like 9th. It's not that bad. He's not as bad as he's been.
Here's the thing, though, and this is what bothers me about it. Right? He was prior to this year. His defense was borderline awful.
Yes.
In Philadelphia. Borderline awful. So he's better, but being better than awful is not necessarily a high bar. Right? Like, okay, he's a little less awful than he was before. And the whole thing about it only being 5 errors, and it's, while true, it's only 5 errors, look around baseball at how few errors there are.
It's almost impossible to make an error.
Yes. So, like,
look what happened in the outfield the other day. The Castellanos-Mars situation. By the way, Philly center fielders. Can we just like build a segment in? Like, see if we can get Rustic make like a sound drop for us. Like center field with a big fart noise. Like center field update.
Boy, did Marsh. And I felt bad for Castellanos. Honestly, it should have been an error.
It's Marsh's ball. It's Marsh's ball to take charge. How many times can that guy get into a situation where he goes, oh, is this me? Should I not? Just go get the ball. It's your ball.
And how about, I'll give you another one that probably nobody noticed even yesterday. This has nothing to do with Marsh. This is Rojas, because Bryson Stott catches a pop-up. I forget, it was like the 7th inning or something, 6th inning, 7th inning. And he really went out to center field and makes a nice play to catch like that, to catch a pop fly. Rojas is nowhere near the play. That's a ball that's the center fielder's ball. And he should be calling off the second baseman because he's coming in on the ball and get to it with his speed. And he's nowhere near it. And so Stott has to make a hard catch on a pop-up on a ball that should easily be the center fielder's ball. So it's crazy.
To be fair, both Marsh and Rojas were a big part of that furious 9th inning rally on Saturday. So you do have to give them credit for that. If you're gonna be negative and hard on them, you gotta highlight the positives.
There you go.
And that'll do it for today's center field update. It's just so bad. Like, I know, like, the Phillies listen to this and stuff, and like these guys are great guys. Like, you really are. A PR team, awesome stuff. Been very helpful to us. Love you guys. The center fielders on your team stink. I'm sorry. Like, and I guess that takes 2 players out of the equation that could appear on our show in the future, but they just aren't good enough.
Yeah. It's a real problem. It's a real problem, and it's one that they really need to address. I don't know how they're going to address it.
You know what I don't want to do today? I don't feel like reading like all the advanced metrics on Turner. The thing is that some of them defensive run save are still terrible. Like, and I believe it's the worst by a country mile since 2023, since he first got here, in terms of defensive run save. But some of the advanced metrics aren't that bad, and there have been improvements. But that play yesterday, it's like, what else is there to say about it? Rob was correct. Like, hey, we're going to talk to, or Bobby Dickerson's going to talk to him. It's a play he has to make. I mean, yeah, there's nothing else to say about it. It's a play he has to make. And chances are it won't be the last time that his defense kills him. Conversation with Bobby Dickerson or not. Like, I don't know what else you can even say about it. He probably should not be their shortstop. But they didn't have that conversation with him going into this season. Dave, who was challenged by your colleague, Tim Kelly, at the end of the season press conference last year, was almost like perplexed at the insinuation that perhaps Trey Turner was insufficient defensively at shortstop.
Yeah.
And
I want to give you something. I don't know if you saw this today. I got to give credit to Matt Gelb, because this is a great little bit of writing where he says at The Athletic, Matt Gelb, he says, this season, when an opposing batter puts a pitch thrown by the Phillies in play, there is a 31.8% chance it will be a hit. Only the Colorado Rockies, perhaps the worst team in the history of organized professional baseball, convert batted balls into outs at a lower rate.
Crazy.
Now, part of that is on pitching, but it's more indicative of the defense not being good enough. In my mind.
I have that in front of me here. Colorado 327 batting average balls in play this season. Phillies 318, Nationals 307, Marlins 305, Diamondbacks 293. Like, these are bad staffs around them. Interestingly, the Dodgers are the next good team that have a high BABIP there. But again, what's interesting about that is like this kind of actually backs up Matt's point too. Like, wins above replacement as a staff, Colorado 1.4, Phillies 9.4.
Yes,
the Phillies have a great staff, and they're in the same area code of Colorado. I mean, that speaks to how bad the Phillies defense is. It's a different way of explaining, and that's not just errors or we kicked it, which, as you noted, it's impossible to make an error now in 2025 in Major League Baseball. But just in terms of range, like, I don't want to start picking on guys, but just mentally go around the diamond and think about what you see when a ball gets hit near these guys. Marsh can't read a ball. Rojas, there was that catch that he made where he was twisting and turning, going backwards last week, and everyone's like, "Whoa, what a sensational catch!" It was a horrible read. He put himself in a compromised position, and then he's athletically gifted enough to make up for it. Which, like, kudos to him. He has a skill that a lot of other guys on this team don't have. Kepler's played an okay left field. But, Castellanos is limited, short-handed, but very limited in right. And, we've done the infield. Like, we know what the deal is there. It's bad.
Yeah, it's terrible. It's terrible. Last thing on the Phillies for this weekend was Rob taking responsibility for not batting for Weston Wilson in the sixth inning against a right-handed pitcher, not going to Kepler in that spot, which he's done in the past several times. And knowing that Kepler's a better defensive outfielder, he probably makes that play. It's not a double. And maybe the Phillies end up winning that game. So Rob kind of took it on his responsibility, put it on his own shoulders, and said that, he's second guessing himself after that. I was really surprised to hear Rob say that. I think, here's the exact quote. There's a couple of things that I'm going to look back on over today's game and question myself over. So not only do we have to play better, but I have to manage better. Like, whoa. And I'm wondering, is he saying that because there's some pressure from within the organization? Or is he saying that because he feels like he really blew it in one game?
He might have. I mean, I think he should be hard on himself. That's one where a lot of times we get on here and we talk about things that happen and say, like, well, Rob could have done this. And very rarely will you hear me say, Rob should have done this. Where was he on that one? I think a lot of times we talk about the bullpen, right? Especially in terms of how they utilize their pitchers. It's like, well, why didn't he go to Strom, who then we're cursing at 20 minutes later? How come you didn't go to Kirk? Like, what's he supposed to do? Like, in terms of the staff.
Well, let me just ask you a question. Was that an impression of the same people who asked you about the Jesus Luzardo thing on May 31st?
Yeah, I got real sensitive online this weekend, I guess. I don't know. It really pissed me off, though, man. Really got to me this weekend. Like, I have my 3-year-old son or my 2-year-old son sitting in front of me, and he's like, "Daddy, help me!" And I'm like on my phone, like this idiot, like busting my stones about it being May 31st. Hold on, son. I got to tell this internet troll to shut up. But like, I mean, Rob, I think in general is a little bit, he doesn't have a lot of options. Like I actually I feel for Rob sometimes, when everyone's killing him. I thought that was an obvious one yesterday, and I appreciate that he admitted as such. I think there might be a little bit more pressure. We've talked about how they've played things this year. They have not let the status quo. I mean, they've certainly, from a roster construction standpoint, let status quo play. But in terms of how Rob's handling the lineups and the shuffling and pushing pitchers an extra inning here and there, and yes, they have depth and they have options coming, and maybe they can lighten the load in the second half and all that. But I think that Rob has managed with more urgency. So to see them lose the series, get swept, and then speak a little bit differently, I think kind of cuts into that undertone of this isn't last year. Like there's a little bit more angst, I feel like, from Rob, even if he's not going to be real fidgety and outspoken and bombastic with his speech.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think that urgency is there. And it's something that we're going to explore in the coming weeks. A little bit, kind of dive into that. We have some stuff coming up. Something got pushed back, and we're going to have it come up next week, probably when I come back home. Looking at that Blue Jays series in Philadelphia. Speaking of the Blue Jays, that's where the Phillies head next. They go to Toronto. Bryce Harper will be back in the lineup, which will help. There's no question.
It does help.
Yeah, I mean,
it's getting your best hitter. I know Kyle Schwarber, but getting your best hitter back tends to change the outlook of a lineup.
I mean,
Dodgers minus Ohtani, Yankees minus Judge. I know he's not having that type of season, but he's that guy.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that that's part of, what went wrong this weekend was not having Bryce. But as far as the offense is concerned, he gets back in there. Toronto's just a mediocre team. I think this is an opportunity for the Phillies to bounce back. Now, we didn't do predictions for the Brewers series. That would have been the most wrong I would have been all season. I've always been, when I've either been spot on right or off by one game.
Yeah,
I would have picked the Phillies to win that series, and they got swept. So that would have been the most wrong that I would have been. That said, I think the Phillies bounce back here against Toronto. I think that they do take 2 of 3 from the Blue Jays. And I think it's important that they do, because then you get on a roll again, because then you go into Pittsburgh, a team that you just swept here. I know they don't ever play well out there in Pittsburgh, but I think that this could be a good week for the Phillies to kind of rebound, getting everybody back. And they're gonna tout how well things are going now, because they made the changes in the bullpen that I don't believe in, but that's beside the point. But I think that this is going to be a good week.
So we got 4-2 this week.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think you're looking at 2-1 and 2-1. I think that's.
Well, I mean, I'm kind of right there with you, and then you're 15 games over 500. Like that's why, I'm talking about this weekend and what we saw, and what the areas of weakness are. This team does not stink. It doesn't stink. They don't blow. See, this is why they'll never win. Like if they don't make any changes at the deadline, then I'm wait until you hear that show post deadline. I'll be banging that drum harder than anybody. But right now, this current iteration is fine, and it will keep you where you need to be, likely, in my opinion, to the deadline. And then they've got work to do.
Agree.
All right. One last thing, because we got to get out of here.
We got to get out of here. I know you got 3 minutes, or not even 2 minutes. And so I'll just make it a quick one. Did you see what happened in the College World Series with Oregon?
Yes.
With the play at the plate?
Yeah.
So just a brief update. Kid coming home from Oregon, play at the plate, collides with the catcher, originally called safe. After conversation, the umpires rule him out. And not only that, they said it was malicious intent. So the kid is now suspended for the next game. Oregon loses at home, ends up getting upset. Then they lose by the 1 run. Bob, what was your thought on that whole play? I looked at that play and I said, he couldn't avoid the collision. If nothing else, I thought he tried the best he could to let up coming into the plate. It's one thing if you want to say that he obstructed the catcher and you want to call him out, okay. But to call it malicious intent was, I think, the most awful call I've seen by an umpiring crew anywhere in a long time.
Yeah, I didn't agree with the call at all. It's really interesting. I don't know how much of the College World Series or college baseball you're taking in right now, but it's great. There's been a ton of upsets. Like a lot of big guns are going out right now. Kentucky was upset. Vanderbilt got upset. It's been pretty wild, but you see the energy and all the shit talking and the bat flips and the puffing of the chest, and the game is and I don't mind that stuff. I like that stuff to an extent. The game is crazy though. And like all of that stuff goes on and nobody has anything to like, there's no pullback on that. But then you get a play like that at the plate. And like, that's the thing that you're going to the extreme with, like in terms of policing the game. I find that strange. But that being said, it's been awesome to watch.
It's fun. It's a fun thing to watch. I love the College World Series. I don't watch a lot of college baseball through the year, but College World Series, I will tune in and watch it just because the emotion is so high. And so it's pretty cool. Like it's very edge of your seat, and it's nonstop back and forth.
Yep,
that's what the beautiful thing about it. It's great. I encourage everybody to watch it. All right, we got to wrap this thing up. Just as a reminder, you can subscribe to Fighting Words on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, Pandora, wherever you get your podcast. But we prefer that you do it here on YouTube, which you click the thumbs up, ring the bell. You'll get an alert every time Bob and I go live. If you're listening in the podcast feed, you can find us on YouTube at youtube.com/@fightingwords. So for Bob Wankel, I'm Anthony Sanfilippo saying thanks for tuning in, and we will see you on Friday.